I sent an innocent man to death row for a corner office and a mahogany desk. I wasn't the prosecutor, the judge, or the executioner. I was juror number 12, the one who broke the silence of the undecided and turned a room of doubters into a lynch mob in suits. Today is Tuesday. In exactly 6 hours, the state of Georgia will inject a cocktail of midazolam and potassium chloride into the veins of Curtis Washington. They call it justice. I call it a cleanup crew. I am 58 years old now, a senior partner at one of the most prestigious firms in Atlanta. My suits cost more than the car Curtis was driving the night they picked him up in 1998. My house has 12 rooms, and yet I can't find a single corner where the air doesn't taste like old sweat and cheap jury room coffee. I remember the heat of that summer. The air conditioning in the Fulton County Courthouse had failed, leaving us 12 strangers trapped in a room that felt like a pressure cooker. 11 people wanted to go home. 11 people were looking for a reason to say guilty, just so they could breathe air that didn't smell like each other's desperation. I gave them that reason. I manufactured it. Sarah Miller was the victim, 22 years old, blonde, the daughter of a state senator who had half the city in his pocket. She was found in a ditch behind a nightclub, her throat cut with such precision it looked professional. Curtis was there. He was a valet. He had a record, mostly petty stuff, a bit of weed, a fight in a bar. He was the perfect shape for a shadow. A week before I was summoned for jury duty, I met a man in a parking garage. I won't name him yet, but he was a messenger for the Kingmaker. He didn't offer me money. He offered me a future. The senator needs closure, he told me, his voice as dry as autumn leaves. The city needs to see that we protect our own. If juror number 12 ensures a unanimous verdict for death, the bar exam results won't matter. The clerkships will open. The path will be paved in gold. I was a struggling law student, drowning in debt, living in a basement apartment with silverfish in a bathtub. I told myself I was just interpreting the evidence. I told myself that if he were truly innocent, the system would catch the mistake. But I was the system. In that jury room, there was a woman, Mrs. Gable. She was a school teacher, soft-spoken, and she kept pointing at the lack of DNA. "There's no blood on his clothes," she'd whisper, her hands shaking. "How can there be no blood if he did that to her?" I sat across from her. I leaned in, using that deep, authoritative voice I'd spent months practicing in front of a mirror. "Mrs. Gable," I said, "did you see the way he looked at the senator during the testimony? That wasn't grief. That was defiance. Some monsters don't leave DNA. They leave holes in our community. Are you going to be the reason a child killer walks back onto the streets of Atlanta tonight?" I lied about the blood. I told the other jurors I'd seen a forensic report during a sidebar, a report that hadn't been admitted because of a technicality that proved the presence of microscopic spray on his shoes. It was a total fabrication, a legal sin. One by one, they fell. They wanted to believe me because believing me meant they could go home and sleep. When the foreman read the verdict, Curtis didn't scream. He didn't cry. He just looked at me, not at the judge, not at the prosecutor. He looked directly into my eyes, and for a second, I saw it, the realization that I knew. He knew that I knew he was innocent. For 28 years, I have climbed the ladder. Every promotion, every high-profile win, every $1 million bonus felt like a brick added to a wall I was building around my conscience. I married a beautiful woman. I have a daughter Sarah's age. And every time I look at my daughter, I see the ghost of the girl in the ditch and the man in the cage. 3 days ago, a courier delivered a package to my office. No return address. Inside was a set of old police files and a grainy VHS tape from a security camera that never existed in 1998. I watched it in the dark, the blue light of the monitor reflecting off my expensive glasses. The tape shows the back alley of the nightclub. It shows Sarah Miller walking toward a black sedan. It shows a man stepping out of the car. It wasn't Curtis Washington. It was the man who currently pays my firm a $5 million annual retainer. I watched the tape 4 times before I puked into my designer wastebasket. The man on the screen, Marcus Thorne, didn't just kill her. He took his time. The precision the medical examiner praised, it wasn't professional. It was ritualistic. Thorne is the reason I have a corner office. He's the reason my daughter is at Yale. He's the reason I'm considered a pillar of the community. And on that tape, he was a butcher. I sat there in the dark. The graininess of the 1998 footage burned into my retinas. I realized then that the messenger in the parking garage all those years ago hadn't been working for the senator. He'd been working for the man who killed the senator's daughter. They used me to bury the truth under 6 feet of legal procedure and a death warrant. My desk phone rang. The caller ID was internal. My senior partner, Arthur Sterling. "Elias," he said, his voice smooth as expensive bourbon. "I heard a courier dropped off a package. Nostalgia can be a dangerous thing, don't you think?" My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. "Arthur," I whispered, "you knew. You've known for 28 years. "I know that we have a legacy to protect," Arthur replied, "and I know that in 5 hours, the only person who could possibly dispute that legacy will be a memory. Don't be a hero, Elias. Heroes die in the dirt. Partners live in the clouds." I hung up. I couldn't stay in that building. It felt like the walls were closing in, the mahogany turning into the bars of a cage. I drove. I didn't mean to go there, but my hands took me to a small, crumbling house in the West End, a place where the paint had long ago surrendered to the sun. Mrs. Washington was sitting on her porch. She looked like a ghost, made of shadow and grief. She spent nearly 3 decades writing letters that no one reads, shouting into a void that only echoes back silence. I got out of the car. My suit felt like a suit of armor, heavy, cold, and fake. She looked at me, and I saw the same eyes I'd seen in the courtroom. She didn't recognize me as Juror 12. To her, I was just another man in a suit, another representative of the machine that was about to grind her son into dust. "He didn't do it," she said before I could even speak. Her voice was thin, but it cut through the humid Georgia air like a razor. "I know he didn't do it because I saw him that night. He was home. He was sleeping." "The jury didn't believe the alibi," I said, my voice cracking. "The jury didn't want to see a black boy," she spat. "They wanted to see a monster. They wanted to feel safe." I reached into my pocket, my fingers brushing against the flash drive where I'd copied the tape. I could give it to her. I could call the press. I could blow it all apart. But then my cell phone buzzed. A text message. No text, just a photo. It was a picture of my daughter, Sarah, named after the girl who died, walking across the Yale campus. In the background, leaning against a tree, was the man from the parking garage, older, grayer, but still holding the same dry, dead smile. I looked at Mrs. Washington. I looked at the house that was falling apart around her, and I looked at the picture of my daughter, vibrant and alive, blissfully unaware that her life was a bribe paid in human sacrifice. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "For what?" she asked, her eyes narrowing. "For everything." I turned around and walked back to my car. I am a coward. I have always been a coward. The bar exam results didn't matter because they'd already bought my soul before I even had a license to practice. I drove to the execution site. The prison, Jackson State, loomed out of the darkness like a medieval fortress. Protesters were gathered at the gates, holding candles. The flickers of light looked like tiny, hopeless stars. I used my credentials to get inside. I told the guards I was there as a legal observer. They recognized my name. They let me through. I ended up in the viewing room, separated from the chamber by a thick pane of glass. There were other people there, the senator's family, the senator himself, now an old man in a wheelchair looking for the peace he thought this death would bring him. He caught my eye and nodded. He thought I was his ally. He thought I was the man who helped him find closure. Then they brought Curtis in. He looked smaller than I remembered. He was strapped to the gurney, his arms outstretched in a cruciform position. The IV lines were already in his arms. He turned his head. He scanned the room through the glass until he found me. He didn't look angry. He looked pitying. The warden asked if he had any last words. Curtis cleared his throat. The sound echoed through the speakers in our room. "I didn't kill that girl," he said, his voice steady. "But I'm not the one who's truly dying tonight. The man who did this, the man who let this happen, he has to live with himself. That's a longer sentence than mine." The first drug began to flow. I felt the flash drive in my pocket. It felt like it was burning through my leg. I looked at the senator. I looked at the warden. I realized I could stand up right now. I could scream. I could hold the drive against the glass. But I thought of the photo of my daughter. I thought of the kingmaker. I watched the light leave Curtis Washington's eyes. The flatline wasn't a sound. It was a vacuum that sucked the remaining oxygen out of the viewing room. The senator exhaled, a long rattling sound of relief that made my skin crawl. He reached out and squeezed my hand with a grip surprisingly strong for a man in a wheelchair. "Thank you, Elias," he whispered. "Justice is a slow harvest, but it is sweet." I couldn't look at him. I couldn't look at the body on the other side of the glass. I walked out of the prison, my legs feeling like they belonged to someone else. The protesters were gone. Only the smell of damp pavement and the low hum of the cicadas remained. I drove home in total silence. I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't check my phone. I kept seeing Curtis's eyes, pitying me. He was free. He was finally, eternally free of the lie. I was the one still in the cage. When I pulled into my driveway, the house looked like a mausoleum, 12 rooms of hollow space, lit by expensive designer lamps that didn't provide any warmth. I walked into the kitchen and poured a glass of scotch. My hands were shaking so hard the crystal clattered against my teeth. He's gone, isn't he? I spun around. My daughter, Sarah, was sitting at the breakfast nook. She wasn't at Yale. She was wearing a silk robe, her face pale in the moonlight streaming through the window. "Sarah, what are you doing here? You should be in New Haven." She didn't answer. She just stared at a folder on the table, the folder from my office, the police files, the tape. "I sent it, Dad." The glass slipped from my hand. It shattered on the marble floor, amber liquid splashing across my shoes. "What?" I choked out. "I sent the courier," she said, her voice devoid of any emotion. "I found the tape in Marcus Thorne's private study 3 months ago. I've been interning there, remember? You set that up for me." I felt the world tilt. You knew? You knew he was innocent, and you sent me that tape. Why? To help me save him. Sarah stood up. She walked toward me, and for the first time, I didn't see my little girl. I saw a reflection of myself, cold, calculating, a predator in the making. "I didn't send it to help you save him, Dad," she whispered, leaning in close. "I sent it to see if you would ruin us." I stared at her, horrified. "I knew you wouldn't," she continued, a small, terrifying smile touching her lips. "I knew you loved this life too much. I knew you loved me too much. You sent an innocent man to die 28 years ago to build this empire, and tonight you let him die again to keep it." "Sarah, I did it for you. They threatened you." "No, Dad, you did it for the mahogany desk. You did it because you're a coward who likes the view from the top." She patted my cheek, her touch as cold as a corpse. "I'm proud of you. Now I know for sure that when I take over the firm, I won't have to worry about your conscience suddenly waking up and burning our house down." She turned and walked up the stairs, leaving me alone in the dark kitchen with the smell of spilled scotch and broken glass. I realized then that the kingmaker didn't need to kill my daughter. He had already turned her into him. The cycle wasn't broken, it was perfected. I went to my study and opened the bottom drawer. I took out a bottle of sleeping pills, heavy dosage. I took 2, then 3. I don't want to die. I'm too much of a coward for that. I just want to stop hearing the sound of the needle entering the vein. I just want to stop seeing the girl in the ditch. But as the pills start to cloud my mind, I realize the worst part of it all. I'm not seeing ghosts. I'm seeing my daughter's face. And she's smiling.